Of a hope, from pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and he did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, Britain. It's 8 p.m. on Friday, the 31st of January. On this day, 5 years ago, Britain finally left the European Union. My name's Tom Harwood, and this is Brexit Day 5.
Tonight, we are leaving the European Union. For many people, this is an astonishing moment of hope, a moment they thought would never come.
Well, it captured the attention of the nation, and after years of arguments, wranglings, slogans and campaigns, at 11 o'clock on the 31st of January 2020, Brexit was done. Boris Johnson claimed it was the dawn of a new era.
Proud of what I've done. I've been supported by a huge number of people, and now we have a Prime Minister saying all of the right things. And I wish Boris Johnson well. If he keeps his promises, we will get a Brexit that will put us in a completely different place to the rest of Europe. We have a great future ahead of us.
So we have to make the case for the benefits of migration, the benefits of free movement. I want people in this country to be able to go and work abroad.
Well, what did it mean for you? What was promised? And in the end, what did we get?
Everything's in chaos, and Brexit's not been allowed to be delivered.
What exactly are we benefiting from this, apart from rising costs in food?
Too many people are trying to change it.
Trying to stop it.
Yeah.
Sore losers.
I would say so, aye.
It's been a unique journey through British politics, and it began nearly a decade ago.
Turning your back to an anthem of a pretend country that's trying to assert itself as a global player, that's trying to federalise, that's centralising power, that's taking power away from national government.
I think we all feel a little older now, but did we take back control, and did we get Brexit done? Don't miss a moment as we pick through every significant element of the biggest democratic event of our lifetime, as well as bringing you Nigel Farage's speech live from Kemi Badenoch's constituency. He's speaking in just a few short minutes. I'll also be joined by a barnstorming Brexit Day panel live in studio. Former UKIP leader Henry Bolton, former Conservative MP Tobias Ellwood, and the writer and broadcaster Nina Miskow. This is Brexit Day 5 with me, Tom Harwood. Let's get going. Now, the Reform UK leader, Nigel Farage, will be taking to the stage any moment now. But first, we're going to catch up on the news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Tom, thank you very much. Well, the UK is marking 5 years since it left the European Union, and former Prime Minister Boris Johnson has exclusively told GB News now is the time to double down on Brexit. He also said we need a government that really believes in Brexit, and we need the British ruling class finally to match the bravery and imagination of the 17.4 million people who voted to leave. For supporters, the UK became a sovereign nation in charge of its own destiny. Opponents believe it's isolated the country and damaged the economy. A tireless campaigner for Brexit was Reform UK leader Nigel Farage. Here he is celebrating 5 years ago. Well, today, Mr Farage is holding a Reform Party conference in Kemi Badenoch's constituency. He's due to take to the stage any moment now. Earlier, he told Martin Daubeny, although it was the right thing to do, we haven't grasped the opportunities that could have come with it.
So many things that we stayed aligned to, including most of their rulebook. Now, clearly, what Keir Starmer wants to do is, in terms of the defence and perhaps even foreign policy, tie us closer to the European Union. From the sounds of it, he wants us to start mirroring the single market rulebook. I mean, none of that is good, but is Keir Starmer going to take us back into the European Union? No, he is not. So I just see this now as being unfinished business. You're quite right. Starmer was an uber Remainer, a rejoiner, wanted to have a second referendum. The Tories, from what I can see now, never really believed in it. So Reform are the only people who can finish the job.
Despite the economic disadvantages, Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch is remaining positive.
5 years ago, we had what was the greatest vote of confidence in our country. And as Brexit Secretary, I removed lots of EU regulations. I ended the supremacy of the European Court of Justice. But there's still a lot more to do, like a trade deal with the US. That's a Brexit opportunity that we need to take. We started those negotiations when President Trump was last in power. He is back again. The Biden administration didn't want it. I think Keir Starmer needs to look at that, look at where the opportunities are. That's where the growth is going to be.
Those are the latest headlines for now. Back to Tom.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Well, a very good evening to you at 8:05 on this Brexit Day. Joining me in the studio tonight throughout the programme is the former UKIP leader Henry Bolton, the former Conservative MP Tobias Ellwood and the writer and broadcaster Nina Miskov. Let's start with you, Tobias. This has been a tumultuous 5 years since the vote, but of course 5 years before then, when your party leader David Cameron won that general election, guaranteeing that referendum. What are your reflections?
I can't find a single Brexiteer, or indeed Remainer, who voted back in 2016, not 5 years ago, but now almost 10 years ago, that is happy with where Britain is today. And the fact that Nigel Farage chooses to go to Kemi Badenoch's constituency to make a speech shows how party politics is clearly alive and well, but it's not in Britain's interests. We are damaged internationally, reputationally, and we've damaged our economy. And it's 5 years since the signing, but it also is an opportunity at this anniversary because it's a trade and cooperation agreement that's come to an end. Would anybody go into the room in Brussels and say, nothing to see here, we like where we are today, let's continue? So the question for us today, I hope that will advance, is how can we advance the model of Brexit
hold
today?
That thought, Tobias. We're going to go live to North West Essex, where Nigel Farage is taking to the stage. This, of course, Kemi Badenoch's constituency. Nigel Farage assumed the leadership of the Reform Party in the middle of the general election. He wants to win the next election. Will he be able to? Well, what he says tonight will no doubt carry great significance. Let's listen in.
Well, what a pleasure it is to be here in the North West Essex constituency, which just... well, some may say by sheer coincidence, but it's not. Happens to be the constituency of the leader
of His Majesty's loyal opposition, Kemi Badenoch. And that's why I'm here, and I'll tell you more about that in a moment. But first, of course, just have a think about this. Something truly extraordinary is happening out there. Something remarkable, something historic, something everybody thought was literally impossible. A new political party that started off 7 months ago with no representation in Parliament whatsoever, that made its first big step on July the 4th last year with 4.1 million votes and 5 seats, and everyone said, well, that's it. They can't possibly go any further. And here we are this week with 7 opinion polls showing that we now are consistently 3 points ahead of the Conservative Party and just a point or two behind the Labour Party, and we are achieving something. We are achieving something that is quite remarkable. And we've been riding a bit of a wave. And you know what? If we keep riding that wave a bit more, we really will surprise everybody come that next general election when we win it. Now, it is the 5th anniversary of Brexit, and of course I'm quite used to fighting against the odds. Indeed, for much of my political career and many of those long years that I spent in Brussels and Strasbourg, everybody said to me, you're wasting your time. You'll never get anywhere. Everybody agrees we should be in the European Union, the Labour Party, the Liberal Democrats, the Conservatives, the TUC, the CBI, the Bank of England, the BBC. And you're wasting your time. And yet, we built up a movement across this country which forced David Cameron, remember him? I tell you what, the history books won't. And that referendum happened, and I was able to go to the emergency debate in Brussels the day after the referendum. Quite extraordinary. I mean, I got on Eurostar, I got off at the station in Brussels. I mean, everybody hated me. It was quite extraordinary. And I did call it a non-country, you're quite right. And I wasn't wrong. And I so enjoyed going down into that chamber, and there was Jean-Claude Juncker, the President of the European Commission, a man whose drinking habits made me look like a Methodist. I was able to get up and say, when I came here 17.5 years ago, I said that I would lead a campaign that would take Britain out of the European Union. And you all laughed at me, I said. But you're not laughing now. And it's the same this time. Everyone says we can't do this because it's impossible, because it's never been done before. Because how can you go from 5 seats to winning a majority? And my answer to that is very simple. Something remarkable is happening in our country. We have lost faith with our political class. We know whether it's Labour or Conservative, we're pretty much getting about the same. And it will let us down again and again. And I think as far as I'm concerned, people know I've been warning for over 20 years that our immigration policies would not just devalue the quality of life of everybody in this country, and by that I mean housing, GP access, traffic on the roads, but would also lead to huge divisions in our society. I've been consistent and clear, along with my colleagues. The lunatic net zero policies set up by the Conservative Party, now being followed by that fanatic Ed Miliband. Doesn't believe in God, so he has to believe in something, and it seems to be it's climate change. And people know we've been right on issue after issue after issue, and I think also we're beginning to see a wave that is crossing the Atlantic from the east coast of America, where Donald Trump standing on a platform, many of whose policies were not dissimilar to what we put to the British people in that contract last July, has won this incredible victory and got off to the most amazing start. And even those people that don't like him say, you know what, he gets things done. And the confidence in us that is growing is people say the kind of folk that are standing and representing reform have actually had jobs. Can you believe it? I mean, very few people in politics have had jobs, including the entire front bench, not one of whom has ever set up or worked in a private business. And people look at us and say, like Trump, these people will get things done. And believe me, we will. This is not just going to be an earthquake in British politics. This is going to be the biggest historical political change this country has ever seen. Now, at this moment 5 years ago, I was getting ready to go to Parliament Square, where Richard Tice and I had organised the big rally, and about 100,000 people turned up. It was an amazing event, and as the clock ticked down to 11 o'clock, I had the honour of counting down 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, Bush. And the joy in the crowd was incredible. We'd achieved something remarkable. It was the greatest constitutional victory against the establishment seen for many centuries in Britain. It was amazing. And yet, where was Boris Johnson? In 10 Downing Street, rather pathetically banging a gong. And do you remember the faces of Michael Gove and Boris Johnson the morning after the referendum? They looked in total shock. They didn't really want to leave the European Union. It was all a game about who leads the Conservative Party. So 5 years on, I'm asked, inevitably, has it been a success? No. Well, look, constitutionally, it is a success. We are out, and we will not be rejoining. That's important. That's fundamentally important. And I think in terms of foreign policy, we stand far taller on the world stage with Brexit than we ever did before. The nuclear submarine deal that we've done with the Americans and Australians wouldn't have happened as EU members. The lead we took over Ukraine, whether you agree with it or not, was not something we could have done under a common European foreign policy. The rollout of the vaccine, whether you're a vaccine fan or not, we were able to do being free of the European Union. And even Keir Starmer the other day had to admit that when it came to tech, AI and Britain's future, we're much freer not being a part of it. So there are successes. However, many, many millions of people voted Brexit because they thought this was the way to take back control of our borders. And what have we had since? 130,000 young men crossing the English Channel in dinghies. Net migration going up in 2023 to 1 million a year. There are so many people out there who feel literally betrayed. But my message to them is this: they weren't betrayed by Brexit. They were betrayed by a Conservative government elected on the back of Brexit with considerable help from myself, who never ever believed in it in the first place, who never really intended to deliver lower numbers coming into our country, and who thought they could get away with it. Well, folks, I'm back, and they won't get away with it. And frankly, they should never be forgiven for what they've done. And equally, millions of people out there working in business, some self-employed, some with their own businesses as directors, others working for companies. I can tell you that in every sector, from financial services through to fisheries, we had a realistic expectation that outside of the European Union, Many of those crackpot rules would be removed. There'd be a simplification of the rule book. And actually, in many industries, things are worse than they were at the time. Brexit was the right thing to do. Getting back our sovereignty, control of our nation, of course was the right thing to do. I look at the state Europe's in, and you think things are bad here, you want to cross the channel. And I know we've done the right thing. But to actually deliver what people wanted, we need a political party in government that actually believes in Brexit and will keep the promises that were made to the British people, and that party is Reform UK. Now our membership started really growing in December. A sense of energy, a sense of buzz, and somebody had this brilliant idea. Why didn't we put up a live membership tracker that people could, put on their phones or their computers? And just the act of this getting out seemed to encourage other people to do. They quite like seeing the tick, when they join. I must admit, I've become totally obsessed with the live stream ticker. Often getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning, it's coming, sir, it's coming, sir. Your turn will come to speak in the years to come, I've no doubt. I know leadership bids when I see them, don't worry. So I've become obsessed with this, and we thought, well, actually, why don't we have a big push over Christmas, New Year? Because you know what it's like? Everyone gets together with the anticipation of a great Christmas. The first row happens at about 2 o'clock. Uncle Bill gets drunk for the 35th year in a row. So we did a big membership push over that period, and the numbers just really started to explode. And then on Boxing Day, we went through 131,860. And that number was significant because that's the number of ballot papers the Conservative Party sent out in the last leadership election. So we could say, without doubt, we now were the second biggest party in the country. What a Boxing Day present that was, until about 5 o'clock on Boxing Day evening. The Right Honourable Member for North West Essex decided to comment on the situation, and she was, I have to say, less than flattering. Now, what she had to say, I thought it was quite remarkable, really. She said, "It's not real. It's a fake. Coded to tick up automatically. This kind of fakery gets found out pretty quickly." Now, I wasn't very happy with this. And so we invited in some journalists from the Financial Times, from Sky News, from organisations not necessarily seen to be our friends, and they had a look at the system that counts our membership. And we use a platform called Nation Builder, which is exactly the same platform that the Conservative Party use. And everybody agreed that the numbers were genuine. So I asked, and look, I've been in this game a long time. I'm big enough and ugly enough to take all the insults you can throw at me. I literally couldn't care less. It's the rough and tumble. There's a few queuing up there now, I can tell, but it's the rough and tumble of the game. But don't call me dishonest, because I'm not dishonest. And nothing actually could damage your reputation more than being seen to be dishonest and being a fraudster. So I asked for an apology, and there didn't come an apology. So I said I would take action, which people thought meant I'd sue. Now, I'm not very keen on suing, although I'm sure there are some lawyers in the room who think it's great, because they make the money and nobody else. But to sue, you have to prove actual harm. And the truth is, the sheer publicity that those tweets had given us probably got us an extra 20,000 members. So suing was not an option. I thought, well, the next best thing was to come and visit and meet my fake members in the North West Essex constituency. Well, I've got to tell you, looking at you, having met a few of you, you don't look very fake to me, you look very real. And I tell you what, the opposition should be bloody scared of you. So we've got county council elections coming up on May the 1st in Essex, or do we? Or do we? What I do want to say, and thank you for coming along on a Friday night in such numbers from this area, but what I do want to say is we do need more men and women to come forward to stand as candidates for local council and for government at whatever level. And after this event, there'll be tables outside where you can express an interest, and we will vet you, which we didn't do terribly well last time round. In fact, it was probably quite near a catastrophe, but never mind. It was a brand new organisation. I said I would democratise and professionalise this party, and we are doing it. So please come forward in numbers. We need good folk to stand up to represent their local community. Now, there are 1.1 million voters, eligible voters in Essex, who should be going to the polls on the 1st of May. And yet, the Labour government have decided they're going to completely change the structure of local government. They'll get rid of district councils and county councils, replace them by a series of unitaries. Essex will have between 3 and 5 unitaries, and then a mayor will be over the top of all of it. Now, whether you agree with these changes or not, and I'm sceptical, I've got to tell you, I'm very sceptical. I think that some of the smaller district councils that represent the more rural areas and the small towns will finish up actually being governed by the priority of the bigger cities. So I'm concerned about it. But whether we do it or not, shouldn't we have a debate about it first? Yes. Should we have a conversation about it first? Yes. And how extraordinary that it's the Conservative-led Essex Council that have asked for these elections to be cancelled for perhaps up to 2 years. It's going to take at least 3 years for the changes to take place, and the term's only 4 years. There is a single good excuse for any of the 20 million eligible voters in the English counties, not a single valid excuse for any one of them to be denied their vote on May the 1st this year. Not one. Not one. The rumour is up to 10 million people may be denied the vote. We don't know. The decision will come on Monday or Tuesday. We in Essex and elsewhere are readying ourselves to fight those elections. If they're cancelled here, we'll fight them hard elsewhere. We have a petition up and running saying come and sign it, and within 24 hours 160,000 people have signed it. We'll find out more nearer the time, but honestly, I thought only dictators cancelled elections. And why are they doing it? Why are they doing it? Because they're scared out of their lives of what reform is going to do at the ballot box on May the 1st. And so they should be. So we will battle on. We will continue to build our party. And isn't it great? Here in North West Essex, and I checked the numbers just before coming onto the stage, we now in this constituency alone have 490 paid-up members and 460 registered supporters. That in North West Essex alone. And I tell you what, folks, I think we can build on these numbers. I think we can build on the now 190,000 to answer you from earlier. The now 190,000 that we've got. There is momentum behind this party. There is optimism and energy behind this party. And we know what we stand for. Yeah. Family, community and country. They were the words that came into my mind as I travelled up to London in the car on the 3rd of June last year. as I was about to go on stage and end my happy life, my early semi-retirement, and to throw myself back into the political scene. I thought to myself, why am I doing this? What are the things that matter to me? And I think family, community and country doesn't just sum it up for me, I think it sums it up for virtually all of us in this nation. And we've had enough. We've had enough of weakness, gutlessness. We're sick of the education system poisoning our kids. We are unafraid to stand up. And I hope and believe that many things that will happen in America will serve as an inspiration to us. Woke is dying as we watch it in America, which I think is fantastic. And I really hope that the guy that's been put in charge of cutting the size of the administrative state, amazing chap. Do you see the rocket come down? And it was like Thunderbirds, wasn't it? And he's worth 450 billion or whatever it is. And he and I know each other. Elon and I know each other. Did you know that? Yeah. We've had the odd exchange here and there. It'll be fine. But if Musk is able to cut the size of the administrative state, to cut those terrible burdens put on men and women that want to go out on their own and set up their businesses, that will be an inspiration to us too. We are determined to fundamentally change this country. We are determined to turn around by 180 degrees this acceptance of failure, this cowardice in the face of the Marxist left, this devaluing of our history, of our identity, of our culture, of all that we are. We will never judge people, ever judge anybody by their colour, their religion, their gender, their sexual preference. I'd rather not know. We want to live in a free, meritocratic Britain. And I know that when we get there, we're going to face the most incredible challenges. We'll face the teaching unions, we'll face the civil service. It'll be the biggest battle that's been fought in modern times. But unless we turn this around, all the things we value in this country will be gone. We are living in societal decline. We're living in economic decline. People are getting poorer. The streets are becoming less safe. Our kids are being told to be ashamed of who we are. We have to turn this around. And I believe with this party, right now, with the people we're gaining, with the enthusiasm I see here in the room, in northwest Essex, and I'll see it in Durham tomorrow, and wherever I go, we are on the verge of making our own form of history. I believe we can do this. Do you? Yeah. Are you with us? Yeah. How many non-members in the room? Hands up. Right. Don't let them out the door until they pay. But thank you for being supporters. And I want others of you to dig deep and think hard. Could I stand for the local council? Could I be the kind of person to represent the local community? Are you volunteering? Yeah, I'm already there. You're already there? Well, you're no good to me. I need new people. I've got to stand up, guys. Stand up. Very good. There's 3 there standing up. Brilliant. Brilliant. And there'll be more. Thank you. Thank you, because that's what it's about. It's about engagement. It's about getting involved. It's about making commitment. We are the people's army, and we all have to do our bit, whatever that is, whether it's delivering a few leaflets in our streets, whether it's talking to our friends, whether it's going round the pubs. I've been doing it for years. It's not easy. We need to make you fishers of men. We need to make you go out there and spread this message that we are on the verge of something truly astonishing that will improve our country. Thank you very much indeed for coming along and listening. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
listening to the leader of the Reform UK party, Nigel Farage, not only talk about Brexit Day, but also his plans for his party as it approaches the local elections. Still with me in the studio, the former UKIP leader Henry Bolton, the former Conservative MP Tobias Ellwood, and the writer and broadcaster Nina Miskov. Nina, let's start with you. What did you make of what Nigel Farage had to say?
Do you know, he's absolutely brilliant, because there are people out there who will believe this hogwash and will buy into him, because the man of the people, blah, 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 blah. And frankly, that party political broadcast on behalf of Reform did not impress me at all. We were lied to before Brexit. We were lied to. 350 million for the NHS. Millions going to be coming from Turkey, which was supposed to be joining the EU, which it never was. And he was part of that. He was part of that, and never forget that. And Boris Johnson was the other proven liar. I was very glad and happy to go on 3 marches to ask for a second vote. I didn't, you know, and I'd have been happy with that. The thing is now, with Brexit, it's buyer's remorse. Only 30% of people now think it was a good idea. 55% no, it's a bad idea.
OK, let's put that point to Henry Bolton. Henry, you're a friend of Nigel Farage. What do you make of the charge that he was lying?
I think there was a big sales effort on the part of Nigel and Boris and the whole Leave campaign. Now, obviously, I was on the flanks of that, and I became sort of more prominent later, after the referendum. But my fear then, as I said then, and subsequently in some heated arguments, including with Nigel, who I get on well with, but, you know, we argue as well. And what I said was nobody is presenting the United Kingdom and the British people with a vision as to where we want to be 20, 25 years from now, and linking that to the justification for leaving the European Union. And Nigel's absolutely right there, what he said at the beginning, which was effectively that what Brexit did deliver was independence for the United Kingdom in all areas of law, government and public administration. What we failed to do, but I point the finger at Nigel as well on this, was follow up on it. Nobody had a plan. And I've had that argument, and I've been told that's detail. Well, you know, Tobias has a military background, I do, and if you don't look at the detail, if you haven't got attention to detail, you're going to have a problem. And that's what I predicted. And that is why so many people are disappointed with Brexit. Okay. It's because we haven't had, there was no plan, and everything's been ad hoc.
Well, you mentioned Tobias, who, of course, was a member of the governing party for those years. And frankly, Prime Minister after Prime Minister after Prime Minister couldn't pick a lane, didn't have a plan.
I want to come to that, but I need to quickly address this too. Can I say I'm surprised that GBNews allowed that to run so long? I think we were all sitting here watching this, hoping that he would return to Brexit. Instead, we did get a party political broadcast. So I understand perhaps why you let it go, but it was only 2 minutes about Brexit, and then it moved on to the Reform Party and what's going on there. I want to hear what the vision is, because it's not there. It's not clear where we want to go next. I repeat what I said earlier, which is that the 5-year contract is up for renewal. Who would dare go in to Brussels and say, yes, let's sign that again?
Yeah, I just have to say, if we were listening to, if Keir Starmer was making a speech, if Kemi Badenoch was making a speech, we would take the full speech as a party leader.
And I fully understand that. And we were all saying we were hoping to hear, because they are a player in British politics today. We want to hear what Reform is proposing for the next 5 years. What is that vision? And we didn't have one where Brexit landed, and we certainly don't have one now. And that's the big. It has polarised our country. But I must, if you like, unpick some of the things that he just said, because I'm afraid our economy is poorer. The farmers, the pharmaceuticals, the big industries, defence, aerospace and so on, they want a better economic deal. Happy with Brexit, distance ourselves politically, but they want a better economic deal. I heard nothing there at all.
He claims the economy isn't smaller.
We're losing 100 billion a year.
Let me just finish off this point, because there was 3 things that, again, he declared. AUKUS, the deal that we're doing with the United States and Australia. We could only do that if we're outside the EU. Completely wrong. We actually nudged France out the way to get that spot. The Ukraine efforts. We could absolutely do that whether we're in or outside. Nothing to do.
The sanctions.
Nothing to do.
Boris is using it as a...
One second. The Magnitsky sanctions that the UK could do on individual Russians would have had to be
that's individual sanctions.
A complete
where
European
we
effort,
failed Ukraine is offering them equipment, and that's what he was referring to there. I don't think he was even referring... And the last one was the vaccination.
That's a complete lie.
Hungary chose to take the Sputnik vaccination, which is what Russia provided. They're in the EU. It was up to us to choose the models. But they're using this to justify leaving the EU and where we've landed. Now, I'm happy to recognise where the vote went to. But I'm not happy to say this is good for Britain. And that's the question that we now need to ask ourselves. No sector, no economic sector, whether it be health, education, industry, commerce or so forth, particularly the SMEs, are all suffering because of the tariffs and regulations that are hit.
AI is a sector that the Prime Minister gave a speech about 2 weeks ago. He said that because we're not part of the European AI Act, the UK can regulate AI differently in a way that can put the UK at the forefront of the world. That is surely a growth industry of the future and one that Brexit is benefiting.
I can't imagine that the EU would hold us back on that. And I just want to back up with everybody perpetuates this myth that the vaccines could not have gone that way. I think it's Regulation 174 or something mundane like that would have allowed us. I just want to put that to bed.
I think that there were the EU put forward a joint procurement on vaccines.
No,
27 EU
regulation allowed.
It was opt-in, but none of them opted out. But that's a decision. That's not a benefit of Brexit.
It's
the
not.
benefit of Brexit is to see our economy become stronger. And instead,
you've got
organisations right across the board saying our economy has suffered by about 4%.
And yet, Henry,
it's about $40 billion a year.
The 4% has got no real justification, and particularly 5 years down the road, it is impossible to compare properly. But there are two things I would come back on, Tobias, if I may. One is that actually we have, since Brexit, had more freedom in terms of our legislation and our decisions relating to governance than we had before we left the European. Well, just a moment, let me finish. And what we could have done with that, if we'd got a plan, and if we developed a plan now, linked to a vision, don't interrupt me, Tobias. Let me finish if you want me to expand on it. OK, you talk about defence, you talk about all these other things. OK, it is this government, and it was partly your government, who was spending money, sending money abroad, spending money on all sorts of things, but had no plan.
I'm asking you, what's your plan?
Look, I'm sitting here as an individual. I don't have a plan. But what I have said over and over again... You sit there. Your government knew that there was a likelihood or a possibility that the referendum would go our way. Boris Johnson took us out of the European Union.
It wasn't my government. It wasn't my government. It was actually open.
Right, there was no plan. And that is the problem. This country needs a plan, and it needs it now. Going back into the European Union or towards the European Union is not anything.
I'm not suggesting that.
No, nobody's saying that.
I'm not suggesting that.
Now, just hear me out, because the thing is about the economy. It is decisions made by this government that are increasing energy bills. Those energy increased prices are absolutely impacting on all production. So change it, but we've got the freedom to do it. These are choices. These are choices of domestic policy.
Henry, a final word to Nina on this. It's clear the economy's had a bumpy few years, but that's also been true for Germany, for France, for Italy.
Not Spain. You're implying that it's impossible to flourish in the EU. Spain is flourishing. GDP is up. They are growing and they are doing very well. And so this business that EU is all disaster is not true. And I'd like to talk about our borders and immigration very briefly. 2019, the number of people who arrived on boats was 1,800. And after that came Brexit. So your conclusion is what?
Well, post hoc ergo propter hoc. We can't always assume that something that came after something is because of it. But we will pause this conversation for now.
Pretty likely.
Because we're going to talk to a man who helped found the Vote Leave campaign. Indeed, the former Conservative and the first ever elected UKIP Member of Parliament, Douglas Carswell, joins us on the line. Douglas, you've moved to the United States of America. Why did you abandon Brexit Britain?
I came here because I believe in freedom and liberty, and I think the fight for freedom and liberty will ultimately be decided in the United States. Does American exceptionalism survive? Yes, I think American exceptionalism is doing exceptionally well. And I think the new world will once again come to save the old world, as has happened several times in the past century. Listening to that previous discussion about Brexit and the pros and cons of being in the EU is kind of sad. I mean, I don't think anyone in America takes the European Union particularly seriously. They recognize that it hinders growth, that it's a catastrophe for people living in Europe. Clearly, Brexit is a good thing, but there's been a catastrophic, abysmal failure of successive British administrations to take advantage of it. So, I think freedom and liberty on any continent is the answer to greater prosperity and success. I think Europe needs to learn from the United States. Britain certainly needs to learn from the United States.
And what do you mean when you say we need to learn from the United States? What does Brexit allow the United Kingdom to do that the United States is doing, for example, that we couldn't do as a member of the European Union?
Well, Britain's a self-governing country now. The problem is we've not yet got a competent government worthy of exercising that self-government. As I explained to an American audience, imagine that you had secured your independence at the Battle of Yorktown and then put a chancellor and a spiv like Aaron Burr in charge. It wouldn't be great. Britain has put its versions of Aaron Burr in charge, a succession of clowns and spivs. They failed, for example, to exercise the control over our borders that we have. Instead of exercising control over our borders, they allowed millions of people of low income and often low capability and low aptitude and from culturally incompatible Muslim countries to settle in Britain. Disastrous. In the United States, they've had a similar situation, but as of a week ago, they've started to address it. I'm talking to you from a state where literally they have started rounding up illegal migrants and deporting them. Britain has lived beyond her means, taxing and spending above tax revenue for several generations. In the United States, they've done that on an even greater scale, but as of last week, they've started to do something about it. These are the kinds of things that Britain needs to do. Britain can do them now. We can have radical tax cuts, radical deregulation, control of our borders. We could do all the sorts of things that Donald Trump has started to do here in the United States. Britain can do that now, and there's no point in blaming foreigners. There's not much point in having debates about Brexit with Tobias Ellwood, but we certainly shouldn't waste our time blaming Brussels. These failures are homegrown, and we need to find an administration capable of addressing them.
Well, Douglas Carswell, with a barb there at Tobias Ellwood, who's still with me on the panel. I'm sure that you can settle your former, I don't know, arguments that you used to have on the green benches together perhaps another time. But thanks so much for joining us here live on GB News. Now, we've been talking a lot about Europe, but if you're in search of top holiday destinations in Europe, here's your latest forecast for those winter sun destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Often breezy across the Canary Islands and heavy showers in Tunisia and Algeria, but elsewhere it is going to be largely settled, particularly across Greece and Italy. Plenty of sunny spells here, but as we move our way westwards towards the Mediterranean, this is where we're going to find the heavy showers. These could be thundery at times, and then out to the west, high pressure largely dominating, but it is going to bring some strong winds at times across Madeira and also Tenerife, where the best of the temperatures are, and elsewhere it is going to be largely settled into next week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Well, do stay with us here on Brexit Day 5. Coming up, I'm going to be joined by Lord Daniel Hannan. Lord Hannan, another key figure in the Vote Leave campaign. Pick his brains about what's gone right and what's gone wrong about our departure from the European Union. This is Brexit Day 5 with me, Tom Harwood, only on GB News.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
We've got the Daily Mail now with the latest in the court case over whether a man is a woman or a man. It's a tough question. And J.K. Rowling has given her opinion. I think I can guess what it is, Cressida.
Explosive twist in Australia's What is a Woman trans battle as Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling gets involved. So this is the court case Giggle versus Tickle. Tickle was a...
He's Mr. Men.
That's right. It's a Mr. Men trans battle.
Kind of is a Mr. Man.
It was a women's group, wasn't it? Tickle, Giggles... Oh, I get it wrong. Giggles for girls. And Roxy Tickle, who is a trans woman, wanted to join this group and wasn't allowed, was banned for being a biological male, and then sued and amazingly got $10,000 for this, which is already extraordinary to me.
Yeah.
But it's now doubling down and is going to file a cross appeal seeking to upgrade the judgment.
Yeah.
So Roxy has come back for another bite of the cherry.
And I've had a look at this Roxanne Tickle, the trans woman.
Pretty?
No, not one of the pretty ones. Not a Blair White. Just looks like, to be honest, it looks like
you could be sued for $10,000.
Looks like one of us.
Yeah.
To be honest, no. Like I mean, I'll happily.
For yourself.
No, I think it's an absolute. It's a farce, and it's making a mockery of not just. It's not just making a mockery of women's right to have their own spaces. It's making a mockery of genuine trans people who actually put some effort in and look like a woman.
What do you mean a genuine trans
and also,
people?
If
we don't believe in that.
If your name was Roxanne, if you were going to transition, you wouldn't pick the name Roxanne Tickle.
What?
You choose Tess.
Tess. That's a kind of name. No, the truth is that's one of the problems, is you get a choice in the name you're going to choose. And of course, you're going to choose like a hot Roxanne. That's a hot Roxanne. That's a great name. They're not going to choose.
You don't think
Louis.
Tess would work better with Tickle?
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good evening. It's 5 years to the day since the United Kingdom left the European Union. Let's speak to now someone who has spent his entire adult life in Brexit politics. Yes, the Vote Leave co-founder, former MEP, now in the House of Lords, Daniel Hannan. Lord Hannan joins me now. Thanks so much for making the time for us. First of all, is it everything you ever dreamed and more?
Well, no, nothing in real life is ever everything you ever dreamed and more, not in this imperfect and sublunary world. But I am very happy that we are an independent country. I think our sovereignty and our freedom are beyond price, and I've not regretted a moment of that adult life spent pursuing Brexit.
Of course, there have been clearly bumps in the road. I noticed that this week you made the salient point that 5 years ago today wasn't just the day that the United Kingdom left the European Union. It was also the day that the first 2 COVID cases were diagnosed in the UK, and our economic fortunes have been almost intertwined between Brexit and COVID over the last 5 years.
Yes, that's right. 2 Chinese tourists in York and a certain kind of bad faith, nostalgic commentator who's never accepted Brexit has always deliberately conflated those 2 things. And yet, if I look back at the last 5 years, it's a funny thing. And it's difficult in politics often to talk about the negatives, the things that didn't happen, the things that might have happened in another scenario. But I can't help thinking we've dodged a hell of a lot of bullets simply by not being in the EU. So even if you take out the obvious things like not having to pay the money, we've missed thousands of regulations. I was able to buy a phone with an AI, an Apple Intelligence function on it here that you couldn't do in Europe. And we've dodged the post-COVID reconstruction funds. Never mind the things I'm happy about having dodged. It's very interesting to me to listen to ministers, to listen to Keir Starmer saying we're much more competitive because we have our own financial services. We're not doing the EU method of control. To listen to him talking about the opportunities we have in AI. By the way, we don't have opportunities in AI as long as we have the most expensive energy in Europe, but that's a different story. We definitely have a better regulatory model than the EU. And I now detect even a lot of Labour ministers talking very enthusiastically about the possibilities of a deal with our biggest trading partner, the US. And so I think even Labour, having come to office, hankering after going back in some way, or at least going back into the customs union, I think that the more they learn about it in situ, the more they understand that going back into that model and going back into the process to where it's going is not really in our interest.
That is a fascinating perspective. Not so much the laws that we have perhaps failed to strike off our books, but the new laws that Europe has passed that have avoided our statute books over the last 5 years. Dan Hannan, Lord Hannan, thanks so much for joining us here live on GB News. We've only got a minute left, so a final word to my panel. Tobias Elwood, you were listening there.
What does Dan Hannan, David Frost, Nigel Farage and Boris Johnson have in common? They all campaigned to stay in the single market during the referendum because they realised how important economically it would be for British business. And I haven't heard a plan from him, from Farage, or indeed Boris Johnson or anybody else as to where we go next. And that is the question. That's what I'm waiting to hear.
Although, of course, those rules that we dodged, they're single market rules. Nina Miskov, your thoughts?
You know, it's been a complete disaster. If you lived in Scotland, Northern Ireland, London, or mostly in Wales, it was only the expat vote that got that over the line. Democracy was not delivered 5 years ago. Democracy was not delivered, and it still hasn't been delivered.
If you don't believe the UK is one polity, I suppose. Henry Bolton.
Yeah, as I said, we've got independence in law, government and public administration. The point of failure beyond that is the failure of our politicians and our public administration to actually deliver the opportunities that this presents.
OK. Well, I wish we had more time. I really do. But that has been it. This has been Brexit. In many ways, this is your life. Well, do stay with us here on GB News. There's so much more to come. A big thank you to all of my guests. Up next, it's Alex Armstrong. Don't go anywhere.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head towards the weekend, often staying rather wet and windy to the northwest, largely dry elsewhere, and we could even see some sunshine at times. But for now, a frontal system, it's largely fizzling out across the country, but it's leaving behind a fair amount of cloud, a slight ridge of high pressure building behind this. This is where we're likely to see the clearest of skies, so turning chilly here, even possible seeing some frost by the time we reach the morning. But across a large bulk of the country, that's where the cloud is likely to stick around, and also starting to see some cloud push into the northwest, turning rather windy here as well. But most towns and cities just about staying above freezing, but in those clearer skies across rural spots, that's where we could just dip below and see that frost start to develop. So to start the weekend then across Scotland, a bit of a mix between clearer skies and also some cloud further south, so likely a chillier start across the far northeast with a risk of frost. But a change on the way, turning very windy across western parts of Scotland. Some rain just starting to move in here. Similar across Northern Ireland, fair amount of cloud here, turning very windy, particularly around coasts. But plenty of clear skies across Wales, parts of the southwest, so a frost risk here. But elsewhere, quite a grey start to the weekend. But the good news is the clouds should break up nicely, allowing for some sunshine to develop, particularly across Wales, parts of the southwest. Northern parts of England should start to see some sunshine, but across the southeast staying rather cloudy for much of the day, and still very windy across the northwest. A chance we could even see some gales to the very far northwest of Scotland. Cloudier here with some drizzle starting to move through, but temperatures around about average for the beginning of February. Now Sunday, that front moves slightly more inland, so quite a damp day on offer across parts of Scotland, northern parts of England, but any rain largely petering out by the time we reach the afternoon, and plenty of sunshine across the southeast where it's been largely cloudy the last couple of days. And into the new week, still rather wet and windy across the northwest, but largely dry and bright across the southeast. That's it from me. Bye-bye.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. and this is Patrick Christie's Tonight with me, Alex Armstrong. Yes, I'm looking after the show while Patrick has a well-deserved night off. But as you know, I'll be taking no prisoners tonight. No party, no policy or opinion is out of my firing line. But tonight on the show...
Well, folks, I'm back.
Reform UK have had quite the week, haven't they? Are they here to change British politics for the good, or are they here today, gone tomorrow? Our political correspondent brings us the latest from the ground at Reform's rally in Kemi Badenoch's constituency.
Something extraordinary is happening. Those are the words of Nigel Farage here in Kemi Badenoch.